Are just counting quorum now, and we will get started here in just a minute. We're just waiting on about one more person until we can make quorum. We're almost there. We need one more board member to make quorum, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for waiting, everyone. Appreciate your patience. Happy Monday. All right, Tamara, we have made quorum. We can begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Board meeting. Let's call the meeting to order. My name is Tamara Wright with Community Solutions, COC Board Chair, and I will now have Sarah commence roll call with each board member's name and ask you to introduce yourself and your organization. Sarah?
Thank you very much. I first have Ryan Balch.
Hi, everyone. Ryan Balch, City of Chandler.
Thank you. Eric Cole.
Hi, everybody. Eric Cole, Arizona State University.
Thank you. Elizabeth DaCosta.
Hello, Liz DaCosta with Community Bridges.
Thank you. Marshall Franklin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marshall Franklin, City of Phoenix.
Thank you. Tad Gary. Okay, moving right along. Samantha Jackson.
Hi, everybody. Samantha Jackson, Downtown Phoenix Partnership.
Thank you. Bruce Liggett.
Afternoon, Bruce Liggett, Maricopa County.
Great, thank you. Joan Service. And sorry, Joan said she will be joining at 2 p.m. Charles Sullivan.
Charles Sullivan, ABC Housing.
Thank you. Jackie Taylor.
Jackie Taylor, Save the Family.
Thank you, Jackie. And our chair, Tamara Wright.
I'm here.
Great, and I'll go back up one more time. Do we have Tad Gary join us? Okay, thank you. You can take it back over, Tamara.
All right, thank you. For all participants, please mute your phone or computer when not speaking, and please do not put your phone on hold, as sometimes that puts music into the call. And for all participants, we ask that you please identify yourself when speaking. We will be reminding people to do that throughout the meeting. One final housekeeping item, all votes will be roll call votes. Sarah will call the roll after a motion is made. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, call to the audience. Please note that members of the public were given an opportunity to submit written comments relating to this meeting at azmag.gov/comment within 1 hour of the posted start time for the meeting. Were there any comments received?
Yes, Tamara. Amy Schwabenlander, the Executive Director of the Human Services Campus, would like to make a public comment on agenda item number 4, which is up for action, and item number 6, which is up for information and discussion. Oh, sorry, information, discussion, and input.
Okay, and because item 6 is up for information, discussion, and input, we'll have Amy, Executive Director of the Human Services Campus, make her public comment on item 6 now. Thank you, Amy. If Amy's on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would like to hear the presentation before I formulate a comment.
Sure, we could do that.
I was not entirely sure what documents in the packet go with that agenda item. If I might reserve my comment till after.
Sure, we can definitely do that.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the consent agenda. So items 3A through 3D are on the consent agenda. As a reminder, please note that board members may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if there is a need for discussion. Board members cannot comment on a consent agenda item without first requesting it be removed for discussion. Do any members of the board request that a discussion, that something be removed from the consent agenda and discussed? And if so, please state your name and the agenda item to be removed. Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items? If so, please state your name.
Jackie Taylor, motion to approve.
Thank you, Jackie. Do we have a second?
Michelle Franklin, I'll second.
Thank you, Marshall. I will now ask Sarah to proceed with a roll call. Please indicate clearly how you choose to motion, stating yay or nay after your name is called.
Thank you, Tamara. Ryan Balch.
Yay.
Thank you. Eric Cole. Oh, sorry, Eric, you're on mute. Thumbs up means
Sorry,
yay.
yes, aye.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, Marshall Franklin.
Yay.
Thank you. Tad Gary. Okay, just wanted to check. Samantha Jackson.
Aye, but are we missing Liz DeCosta, or did I miss it?
Oh my
I'm
God.
so used to like the
Yeah.
order. I was like, wait a minute, did
You're
Liz
right.
go?
Yep, so sorry. Elizabeth DeCosta.
Aye.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Marshall, sorry. Marshall Franklin, did I just jump through? Tad Gary, okay. Samantha Jackson, so sorry about that. And how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you so much for keeping me centered. Bruce Liggett,
Bruce Leggett, aye.
thank you. Joan Service, I don't think she's joined us yet. Okay. Charles Sullivan,
Aye.
Jackie Taylor,
Aye.
thank you. And our chair, Tamara Wright,
Aye.
thank you. And the motion passes.
Thank you. We will move right along to item number 4. The Racial Equity Leadership Group members, Nikki Stevens, and COC board member Samantha Jackson will present on the Racial Equity Report and Action Plan, including a timeline on action steps. MAG staff Maggie Wong will also present on eviction trends in Maricopa County, highlighting the number of evictions in communities that have high percentages of minority populations. Lastly, Dorian Townsend, Grants and Contracts Manager from CAS, will briefly discuss a possible grant opportunity we have recently learned about for a national grant with the Kellogg Foundation. Okay, so we could start with Nikki and Samantha.
We're using our PowerPoint presentation.
Sarah, are you aware?
The one we used for the committee.
Sorry. Oh, sure. Yes, sorry. I was under the understanding that you were going to be sharing your screen. Hold on.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Last time they shared it for us.
Yes, hold on one second, please.
Okay, no problem. I think that I can figure it out. What about you, Samantha?
Yeah, I was the same. I was like, oh, we could probably figure it out. But Sarah, if you have it and want to pull it up, that's awesome too.
Sorry, one moment, please, everyone. Okay, Jeremy, you should be receiving a presentation here in about 1 second. Thanks for your patience, everyone. All right, about 1 more minute. Sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties. Amy, is it okay if we move on to the next agenda item and then come back to this one? Okay, great. Tamara, if that's okay, let's move to the next agenda item and then we'll come right back to this one. Sorry about that.
Okay, moving on to item 5, interim board co-chair. For this agenda item, I will open it up for discussion for the interim board co-chair. As the COC board strategic planning session on February 12th, it was suggested that the board consider an interim co-chair to support my current co-chair duties. All members of the board were invited to send letters of interest before the meeting today and will now be shared with the board for action. Sarah, how many letters of interest did we receive? I only saw one.
We have only received one.
Perfect. So I'm not sure what to do here, Sarah. If it's just one, we don't need a work group. So do we just move on to voting?
Yes, we can just move on to voting. That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the one letter that we received, which was Ryan Balch as the interim co-chair?
Hi, it's Eric. I so move.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second?
This is Jackie. I second. Or have someone else did go.
Go ahead, Jackie. No, go ahead.
We're in a contest, Marshall.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for the second. And now I'll toss it over to Sarah, who will proceed with the roll call vote. Again, please clearly indicate how you choose to vote, stating yay or nay after your name is called.
Thank you so much. Okay, first person. One moment. We have Ryan Balch. Oh, sorry, excluding Ryan Balch. We have Eric Cole,
Aye.
Elizabeth DaCosta,
Aye.
Marshall Franklin,
Aye.
Tad Gary, Samantha Jackson,
Aye.
Bruce Liggett,
Aye.
Joan Service, Charles Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie Taylor
Aye.
and Tamara Wright.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right. Congratulations, Ryan Balch, new co-chair.
Thank you.
That's so exciting.
Happy to help.
I'm so glad that you're going to be working with me. All right. So how are the technical difficulties going for the racial equity report and action plan?
Technical difficulties were in fact human error, and I very much apologize for that. Jeremy, IT guru, you should, yes, thank you.
All right.
And do I just let him know when I want to move to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Race and Homelessness in Maricopa County, as presented by Nikki Stevens and Samantha Jackson in partnership with Jeff Olivet and Donald Whitehead. That's our Racial Equity Partners Group. So can we go to slide 2, please? So first of all, I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to thank MAG and the many community partners involved with making this happen, including many of you on this call today. I am proud of the community who began this work long before it became the quote unquote popular thing to do. Long before George Floyd and the protests this summer for racial equality, our community has been engaged in this topic and has worked hard to get where we are today. We were lucky to get Jeff Olivet and Donald Whitehead to come work in our community. And as you can imagine, they are quite busy right now. Can we go to slide 3, please? And I wanted to acknowledge all the people on the slide. If you want to go back to slide 2, I apologize. I wanted to acknowledge Dee Dee, Stephen, Hillary, Samantha, Sarah, Julie, Danielle, TJ, Ann, Ruben, and Tamara. You guys have all been instrumental in getting this really difficult work done. So thank you again. Okay, sorry, slide 3. Okay, so how did we get here? And as you can see, some of the data that's on the screen right now, as many of you know, I brought up this issue of the racial inequities I was seeing as a part of the community years ago when we started seeing the point in time count. So I started seeing the point in time count numbers come in, and I saw there was a large proportion of those that were Native and Black. And when I started thinking about the comparison to the actual population, it was kind of startling. Then a few years ago, with the help of the amazing TJ Reed from the Crisis Response Network, he began looking at the data, and he helped me to begin to look behind the numbers and what was really going on. And we were able to see the trends that we were seeing were real. And he was able to gather information that we had never had access to before. And he found that many of the disparities we see today in the homeless service delivery system were all too real. TJ and I looked at the coordinated entry data and knew that Black populations, especially families, were scoring in the rapid rehousing range at a higher rate than the white population. We knew the data now, but we did not know the why, and we did not have a plan on how to address it. Can you go to slide 4, please? So the assessment that was done of Maricopa County began in March of 2020. The Racial Equity Partners began to do a deep dive into our community's data and began an analysis of our community in the coordinated entry system. And we began to look at where people enter the system, which, as we know, the coordinated entry is where people start to receive their homeless services. The 4 areas that we were focused on were racial disproportionality on homelessness compared to the general population, racial differences in the prioritization scores, disparate housing outcomes for people of color, and the differences in the duration of homelessness by race and ethnicity. So now I'm going to turn it over to Samantha Jackson, where she's going to explain a lot more about what their findings were from our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And I'm just going to preface this with my family is all home today. So if you hear voices in the background, it is all of my family. So when thinking about the demographics in Maricopa County, white people make up 54 to 55%. Latinx is 31%, Asian, almost 5%, Indigenous, Native American, nearly 3%, and then Black people, 6%. And when you look at the demographics of those experiencing homelessness, there are nearly 4 times as many Black people more than 2 times as many Indigenous and Native American. And it's striking on the Latinx side that, 20% of the population is experiencing homelessness, but there's a likelihood that that population is being undercounted. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You may want to tell them to go to the next.
I was going to say, we probably need to go to the next slide. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So even one more after this. There we go. So the points. So some of the key things that came from the study is that there is a very strong public perception that we need to continue to battle. That homelessness is, it's something that somebody has put themselves in, and that they just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And we all know that that's not necessarily the case. We also need to look into the bias that is built into our coordinated entry system. Discrimination does exist in housing and criminal justice. The courts don't necessarily track eviction rates by race, but we all know that that's likely true as well, that the people that are getting evicted are typically people of color. And we see this same kind of trend, as Nikki mentioned, play out in the number of days that a person of color experiences homelessness, the likelihood of their return to homelessness after they've had services, and so we've got kind of a lot of work to do now that we know that a lot of these inequalities exist within our system. The one positive that I did want to end on is that the workforce in Maricopa County is actually fairly diverse, and we want to make sure that what we see in that workforce, that those that are involved in doing this most important work actually move up into leadership roles. So if we can go to the next slide, please. All righty, so the road ahead. This kind of jumps into the action plan, and it's really the emphasis of why we wanted to present to the board today. What we really want to look at are, you've got it in your board packet, so I don't want to read it line by line necessarily, but we want to make sure that race equity and the work that has been done here and sort of discovered, and we want to make sure that that is a central theme that runs throughout all of the work that we're doing. I mean, we've been talking about strategic plans and what does the continuum kind of do from here, and a greater regional effort. We want to make sure that race equity continues to be central to all of those discussions, and that we are being strategic about the sort of committees that we need, and that the work that they're doing as well. We've continued to, kind of talk about lived experience and being able to capitalize on that knowledge base from that group. So not only are we kind of using them almost from like that early stages, again, how do we get some of this lived experience? How do we get some of these voices up to the leadership level so that their knowledge can, really be shared about how we make our systems better? Data is critical. If TJ hadn't had the data, he couldn't have discovered this data, we may not be here today. So data will continue to be an important part of what we do. We want to make sure, as I mentioned, that we want to make sure that our workforce is diverse, but we also want to make sure that our leadership is diverse as well. And I think, at some point in time, we really want to kind of jump into these other sectors that we know have a hand in homelessness, and, be able to collaborate there. Hopefully we'll have a deeper discussion at some point about the criminalization of homelessness, because that's an issue that continues to come up in discussions. And then housing discrimination, and what role can we play when it comes to fair housing. So those are the highlights. And from here, we'll take questions.
Thank you, Nikki and Samantha. Are there any questions, comments from the board? Okay, next we have Maggie Wong, research analyst with MAG, who will present on eviction trends in Maricopa County.
I think Ryan had her hand up. I wasn't sure.
Oh, Ryan, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute fast enough. Thanks for seeing that. Sorry, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to the group who did this work. It's tremendous work. I'm really glad to see we're doing this. It's nice to see that what we believe was I mean, it's not nice to see, but it's good to see the data to confirm what we know is happening and then be able to take actionable steps towards this. So just thank you so much for doing this work. And I look forward to seeing what your recommendations will be moving forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. Anyone else? Okay, next we'll hear from Maggie Wong, research analyst with MAG, who's going to present on eviction trends in Maricopa County, highlighting the number of evictions in communities that have high percentages of minority populations. Maggie?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So yes, I'm Maggie Wong. I'm a research analyst at MAG in the Regional Analytics Division. We've been receiving monthly evictions data from the Maricopa County Justice Courts and have some initial analysis of trends that we'd like to share with the board today. So first, are my slides showing as well? Okay, awesome. So first, a quick look at evictions data since the beginning of last year. So when comparing January 2020 to January of 2021, there's been a 45% decrease in eviction cases filed each month. And when you look at this monthly, you can really see that significant decrease in evictions in March and April due to the statewide eviction moratorium put in place due to the pandemic. But it has been rising since then, especially towards the end of last year with a high in December of over 4,000 evictions. And just for reference, prior to the pandemic, in 2019, monthly evictions were generally around 6,000 a month. And then you can see that as of last month, it was just over 3,000. So we're kind of around like half of our previous, what we were looking at previously. And the key question on evictions that everyone is aware of is, once the moratoriums expire, is there going to be a pent-up demand for future evictions? Is there going to be a significant increase in these numbers? It's something that's pretty concerning and we want to be aware of going forward. So we've also been able to do some mapping. Right here we have a set of maps, evictions by zip code for Maricopa County. On the left is the map for 2019. You can see that the total number of evictions is over 68,000. And then on the right, we have the map for 2020 with just under 38,000 evictions last year. And just looking at these maps, you can see there's a pretty clear difference. I'll explain the legends real quick in case they're a little small for you to see. The blue areas are zip codes with 1 to 100 evictions. And then the red and the orange are really where we're focusing on. Those are areas with high concentrations of evictions throughout the year. Orange is over 500 and red is over 1,000 evictions in that year. And looking at the 2020 map, we can see there's really 3 major zip codes that have that red classification, kind of near Glendale, West Phoenix, and then Tempe. But yeah, really looking at these side by side, it's pretty clear the impact of the moratoriums. And then even looking at the totals for both years, you can see that there's been a significant decrease. While the eviction data itself is limited in demographics, what we were able to do is pair it with census data, specifically from the American Community Survey, to start to estimate based on block groups and provide some additional analysis on demographic characteristics in the areas where these evictions are taking place. So for example, here, we are finding that over 60% of evictions are in higher minority areas. So this map of Maricopa County is showing the evictions all as dots, with the ones in the brighter turquoise block group. That means that the eviction is in a block group that has over 50% of the population is minority population. And then all other evictions are shown here in gray. So this chart shows the proportion of evictions in higher minority areas by month since 2019. And you can see that it's pretty consistently been just over 60% for the past few years. The months following the moratorium are in a slightly darker green on the right side. And you can see there was actually a slight increase in April right after the moratorium was put in place. It rose to about 66% of evictions in April were in higher minority areas. So overall, though, although there are fewer evictions cases more recently, the percentage that are in higher minority areas has remained consistent. We also see that 79% of evictions are in lower income areas. So these are block groups where the median household income is under $65,000. So again, on this map, we have the evictions plotted as dots. The brighter magenta colors are evictions that were in these lower income areas, and then all other evictions, again, are just in gray. This chart shows a more detailed distribution for 2020 evictions by household income range. So again, you can see that the majority are on the lower spectrum, but now you can really see that the majority of them are in block groups that have a median household income of $25,000 to $45,000. And finally, we also see that 62% of evictions are in areas with higher poverty. So these are block groups where over 15% of the population is living below poverty. And it's shown here as the blue dots on the map. Those are evictions in the higher poverty areas, while all other evictions are the gray dots. So beyond the data that we receive from the justice courts, there's also data related to evictions coming from the Household Pulse Survey, and that's put out by the US Census Bureau pretty recently. It samples responses on household experiences during the coronavirus pandemic, including housing challenges. And it was designed to provide near real-time data to inform federal and state response and recovery planning. So right now, right here, we have the most recent data for January 20th through February 1st of this year. And this question that was asked is basically the confidence in the ability to make next month's payment for rent. So in the Phoenix metro area, 32% of survey respondents reported that they are not confident in their ability to pay rent. 14% said they have no confidence at all, and 18% said they only have slight confidence. We also have the Arizona and US numbers here as well, just for comparison. The Phoenix metro's, kind of the lack of confidence is kind of right in between the two. Another question that's asked, for respondents who are not current on rent, what is the likelihood of eviction in the next 2 months? So for the Phoenix metro area, over 40% of survey respondents that are not current on rent said that they were likely to be evicted. So 28% said that it was very likely, and 16% said that it was somewhat likely. So these are just two of the key data points from this survey related to evictions. I do want to note that there are other really interesting questions on the Household Pulse survey related to education, employment, food security, health, and more. So that wraps up our summary of some initial eviction trends in the region. I do want to quickly mention that we have a variety of other data tools available at data.azmag.gov and maps.azmag.gov, including interactive maps with statewide demographics and health assets and more. We are continuing to look into different types of analysis using the evictions data, along with data on homelessness in the region, and look forward to sharing more in the future. So thank you very much, and feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thank you, Maggie. Part of that presentation, two things that really stood out to me was that our evictions went up by 1,000 people in December, and also that the eviction moratorium didn't appear to help Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our area. It actually, the evictions increased. So that's interesting and shocking. Any other questions or comments from board members?
And Maggie, this is Samantha. The number that you used for income was 65K. Where did that number come from?
So we took that because the median household income for the county is just under 65,000, so it was an easy breaking point for us.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment? What we were seeing too is that a lot of the landlords are doing non-renewals. I mean, it doesn't capture really the eviction, but they're kind of playing that game or it's they're saying they're not renewing the lease. And so I'm wondering if that's being captured as well.
That is an interesting data point. That and the mutual rescissions, is that being captured as opposed to like not just renewing the lease, but cutting it off and technically evicting somebody without evicting somebody? Those are good questions. Okay. Go ahead.
I had a comment, Tamara, if I could.
Yeah.
And it's probably for Maggie. I was looking at the charts where it showed the highest percent of renters. Was that, it showed the different numbers, the heat map you had? This is over my head, but one of the things I was looking at is the percent of renters by city. And I did that because we were using it as a factor in a formula to distribute money, since under the new federal emergency rent assistance program, you got to be a renter. So I thought we should have a factor beyond just poverty. We also have how many renters you have in your community. And I was surprised at the variance by cities. I mean, some cities had 7%, others had 25% in their city as renters, if I read it right. So anyhow, let me just throw that out as a factor for you to consider when you display things in terms of the, I don't know if that changes anything, but just let me throw that out there. You might want to look at that.
Are you done already? Oh, geez. What's up?
Hi,
Thanks,
Eric.
Bruce.
You're not on mute. Just so you know. Thanks, Bruce. All right, and lastly, we're going to head over to Dorian Townsend, Grants and Contracts Manager from CAS, who will briefly discuss a possible grant opportunity we learned about for a national grant with the Kellogg Foundation.
Hi, this is Dorian Townsend, Grants and Contracts Manager at CAS. Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak briefly about this opportunity. So I met with Ann, Sarah, and the full team this morning, inviting MAG as a key partner for this. We were invited by the Kellogg Foundation last week to apply for a Racial Equity 2030 grant. And these grants are nationally competitive, so I don't want to get everyone's hopes up. You know, there's a small chance, but it's worth taking that chance and putting something really strong together to approach this. But the process is for a series of grants ranging either 20 million or 10 million over 10 years. The way that we are approaching it, so similar to the report that you just put out, CAS did an internal report on racial equity back in October, and our findings were very similar. So we're very much in lockstep on what some of the issues have been in the community, and looking at the sheltered population at CAS, the disparity is even stronger. For instance, you know, with the county population of 6.3% African American, at CAS in our multiple shelters, it's 34.2%. So when I initially came on board to CAS, I looked at some preliminary numbers and started delving into it deeper, and that's kind of how we went along this process. The purpose of the grant would be to look at 3 different areas. The first is internal assessment and training for all involved, which a lot of us have in process already, but just making sure that we're doing thorough racial equity training. And then at CAS, we want to do a full racial equity audit of our own data, and then working with MAG, looking at more of the community data as well, to really delve in even deeper and see what some of the disparities may be in service provision, as well as the disparities in homeless populations as a whole. And then the next step is kind of taking that to the community level, which is collective action for policy and systems change. Some of the areas we're initially looking at, and we will not tackle all of these, like $20 million isn't a magical amount of money, but some of the ones that we identified and aligned very well with the MAG report as well is, first off, disseminating best practices, using our platforms to amplify and center the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, strengthening fair housing protections, expanding affordable housing options, encouraging community housing partners to reduce evictions, and supporting criminal justice system reform. And then, of course, the third stage, which is the key stage, is strengthening the pipeline from homelessness to permanency for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And this is something that, as a collaborative, all of the agencies involved would get together and agree upon, with most of the money of the grant kind of backloaded. Once we've done all the work, where can we invest this best to make the biggest impact? Because, of course, we're not going to get rid of all of the systemic racism in our community, but where can we make the biggest impact with the amount of money we have? And, that might be intervention work, it might be specialized supportive communities, affordable housing options. That's something we would work on all together and put that targeted investment in place. So we're excited about it. The front end is very much just kind of doing the work, working together and deciding what our steps ahead are. And then the actual funding would be more backloaded towards the back end of making that investment in our community.
Thank you, Dorian. Are there any questions or discussion from board members?
Dorian, this is Samantha. What's your timeline like? Like, when is everything due, and how can we help?
So the timeline is very quick. It actually just got extended, thank goodness, because we found out about it last week and it was due this Thursday. But they moved it to March 11th. So what I'm looking at is having the initial draft done by early next week. It's more of kind of a detailed LOI at this stage, with the way they have the process set up, sending it out to partners, reviewing with all partners involved at the end of the week, and then finishing putting it together by that March 11th deadline.
So Dorian, how do you see, so Cass is the applicant, Cass would be managing the grant, right? Is that a correct assumption? So can you help me further understand what you're asking from the Continuum?
So we approached MAG to kind of be key partners, both at the initial kind of internal stage, since you guys have done such wonderful racial equity work already as far as training and analysis, and then also kind of helping on that collective action stage, since much of what came out of the report is also kind of what we've been looking at. So aligning our work rather than working separately, working together with a collective action approach to kind of put all of those resources together and make that impact.
So I'd be curious to know what staff's reaction is, since you've been part of this vetting process. And I'd also be curious to know, in terms of administrative dollars, would there be any administrative dollars for MAG to be part of this effort, or is that too preliminary to have that question answered?
I was planning on putting in some admin dollars for all agencies involved, just because I think that's only fair, since it's going to be a fair amount of work. And Kellogg does allow for that. So yes, there would be some admin dollars. I don't know what that work looks like yet. I'm going to be kind of working on some of those, but yeah, I think everyone will have administrative dollars, just because it's only fair with the fact that collective projects do take time.
And Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And Jackie, just respond to your other question. So we had the meeting first thing this morning. We found out about this very recently as well, as Dorian and said that Cass just recently found out about this. Brandy had the great idea of bringing this to the board right away because we wanted to make sure that you're included in these conversations from absolutely the very beginning. So we went from meeting with Cass this morning at 8 o'clock to talking with you about this today at 1:30. We are in the very preliminary stages of putting together the application. Cass will be taking the lead on drafting the application. They'll send it over to us so we can take a look at it. But if anyone wants to be more closely involved in this work, please do let us know. We'd be happy to have you as part of kind of that project management team. But Julie Montoya from our staff has done a great job shepherding the racial equity work through, working with all of you, working with the board very closely, and she'll be our point of contact on this work moving forward and being able to partner with Dorian and being able to make sure that the Continuum of Care board is very closely involved in these efforts and that we're continuing to align our work together.
Awesome. Thank you. Ms. Townsend, just so you know, and I'm sure you're aware, Maricopa County is also a member of Built for Zero, and we've done a lot of research and back work on racial equity and actually have a framework for building a racially equitable system. And if you needed access to any of those kinds of materials or what Maricopa County has agreed to buy into since joining the Built for Zero movement, I would be happy to share any of that with you. In addition to a lot of what we discussed in the racial equity work group, and I'm sure you have already seen the report that we sent out, but anything where we can align your efforts with what we've been doing, that would be fantastic. And anything that I can do to help, I'm more than happy to help with.
No, I would love to take a look at that. And you know, I read the MAG report. I was very impressed, and I would love to see that. Like, we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel or work separately. Like, we want to work together and just kind of empower all of our agencies to make as big of an impact as possible.
Okay, great. Maybe you
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you, Dorian, for presenting today. And I just wanted to, you know, put in my 2 cents as well. You know, we did get to meet briefly this morning, but, you know, in our brief conversation, we were able to, you know, talk a little bit about that alignment and coordination so that we wouldn't be overlapping the work that has already been being done, but there is opportunity there for, you know, for us all to collaborate and work together.
Absolutely. And I know that we had a comment from Amy Schwabenlander. I'm not sure if that was in reference to this particular presentation or one before, but I just wanted to make sure that we didn't forget about her public comment.
Yep, it is this one, Tamara.
Perfect.
It's this agenda item, whenever you're ready for me.
We're ready. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was looking for your face in this multitude of Brady Bunch squares. Now I see you. Chair Wright, thank you. I'm very excited about the race equity document. I think it's phenomenal, the amount of work that everyone did. It is affirming to read comments that I know I heard and made through the process. So thank you. And I know Julie had a lot to do with that, as well as a lot of other people. A couple of things I want to throw out. I hope the board takes action and approves this. I would hope to throw some other items into the consideration for next steps, though. So one piece that's missing for me when I read it is to what end, what are the recommendations going to lead to? So what will be different and how will it be measurable to know that action on these next steps made a difference? That part is not entirely clear to me, although I don't disagree with the steps. 2 things that also jumped out that I'm not sure I see clear recommendations on are the length of time homeless and the disparity by race, and the returns to homelessness from different housing interventions, which also led me to want to comment and just remind folks, I know you all know this, the coordinated entry system is much more than the tool and the assessment. It includes everything from engaging people from their experience in shelter to the prioritization process itself, and then the actual housing intervention. And so when we throw out coordinated entry, it means everything from start to finish. And so I think there's pieces in here that are real opportunities also to look at shelter programming and why are people of color experiencing homelessness And are they in shelter longer than white people or not? I'm not sure. But I think there's shelter intervention work, whether that's setting standards or establishing best practice, that I don't see in here. And then on the housing end, and speaking as the coordinated entry lead for single adults, people who return to homelessness come back here to the Human Services campus if they're single adults. And I feel like there's an opportunity to also have some more conversation around the fidelity to the permanent supportive housing model, and also what model of rapid rehousing is the community implementing. Because speaking from the place I'm in, we have to deal with the recidivism, and I don't think it's solely connected to the original assessment or prioritization score. So I put this out there again just for consideration as the work continues, because I know this is the first step, and it is quite amazing everything that was pulled together in this one document, and I hope those are ideas that will be taken into consideration as everyone moves forward.
Thank you, Amy. I think you're exactly right. I know as part of the Built for Zero framework, our definition of having a racially equitable system means there's no disparity, that the people that are experiencing homelessness in shelter or on the street would match their proportion to the population, and there wouldn't be a disparity there. But I think we definitely need to have clear, measurable outcomes and accountability frameworks built into the racial equity plan. And I think that how we were going to move forward was give out this report, and then once we start to figure out how we want our committees structured, the committees would start to come up with what their plan would be and what it fits into that particular plan, and making sure that we're making something that's measurable and really showing like what success actually does look like. And I think you're absolutely right. The returns are a disparity that we need to look into a little bit more deeply. I feel like the veteran system is a microcosm of what's happening everywhere else in our system, and we have really high returns in the veteran system. They've slowed down a little bit since the eviction moratorium. They went back down to around 13 a month, but we did see a spike last month of over 30, I think it was 33 returns. And that's just really high to have that amount of returns in a month for a microcosm of the bigger system. And so something's not working that we should definitely be exploring. So I thank you so much for your comment. Any other comments from board members?
Madam Chair, can you hear me? It's Eric.
Yes.
Yeah, I just echo that same comment, and I would hope I mean, this is phenomenal work. I'm very, very grateful that the committee has done it. You know, I got excited about this topic at one point while we were working through the process, and you know, was reminded by folks about, you know, some of the things we have and the policies we've got in place are there, you know, for a reason, and it's good reason. So I would just hope, as you say, as we go forward with the committee process, that we are able to look at, you know, dive deep into these, you know, into the recommendations that matters, not from a perspective of not changing, but a perspective of really looking at, you know, consequences and unintended consequences on both sides. So I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get to some resolution. But also, you know, not take any, not throw out something that might have been working somewhat in the past, I guess is what I'm saying. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think Jeff Olivet and Donald Whitehead would like to say something. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Go ahead. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Tamara. I can address the questions that Amy raised on data and on outcomes. And then Donald, perhaps you can address the coordinated entry questions, because I don't think we heard anything shocking or surprising in what you just said, Amy. I think on the data front, in the actual plan, the Racial Equity Action Plan, there is very specific guidance around tracking evictions by race and by geography as well, which I think ties into the evictions presentation we heard. There are items around tracking returns to homelessness by race and ethnicity, not only duration of homelessness, but also that kind of split into permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing and the racial dynamics of returns to homelessness. So I think everything that Amy raised around the data is named in the action plan itself. Around outcomes, the action plan also has very specific targets that the group has, the racial equity leadership group has identified around each dimension of the action plan. I think Tamara is right that as we figure out implementation of that plan, assuming the board approves it, those outcomes would need to get more specified, more refined. It's sort of like I think a first cut at operationalizing the recommendations that were in the report. So there's the report on the one hand, then there's the racial equity action plan that kind of carries through on those recommendations. So I wanted people to kind of have that bit of context. Around coordinated entry, Donald, you've been much more involved in that work than I have in Maricopa. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you summed it up quite eloquently. There are definitely, there's a lot more in the plan than what you see from the highlights. So we've really moved the needle quite a bit on every one of those areas. I would say the lived experience in particular is one that's moved quite a bit. But coordinated entry from the very beginning, we say, and we hope that people hear this very clearly, that coordinated entry is not a prioritization tool. It's not any specific aspect, excuse me, of coordinated entry, but it's looking at every entry point in the system and looking at interventions at every entry point in the system. So from outreach to permanent housing placement, there is a need to adjust what we're doing in order to get the outcome that we hope for, and that is racial equity. So whether it's, again, outreach, whether it's the placement, and sometimes it's not where people are placed, it's just that they might have been placed in a different outcome if the prioritization was different. So sometimes it's not that they're in a specific housing program, it's just that because the score is a little different than perhaps it should be, that people that should be in permanent supportive housing, for instance, are in rapid rehousing. And if they were in permanent, the returns to homelessness might go down quite a bit. So it is an overview of the entire system and finding out, looking at developing interventions for every entry point into the system. So we definitely are along the same lines when it comes to how you examine a system, how you develop outcomes, and how you develop timelines. And we certainly have looked into all of that. Definitely on the same page, the same thoughts, and thank you for your comments about the whole system intervention.
Thank you, Jeff and Donald. Any other comments from board members? If not, do we have a motion to approve the racial equity report and action plan?
Jackie Taylor, so moved.
Thank you, Jackie. Do I have a second?
Be happy to second. It's Eric Cole.
Thank you, Eric. And now I will ask Sarah to proceed with roll call. Please indicate clearly how you will choose to motion, stating yay or nay after your name is called. Sarah?
Thank you, Tamara. Ryan Balch.
Enthusiastic yay.
Thank you. Eric Cole.
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Elizabeth DaCosta.
Aye.
Thank you. Marshall Franklin.
Aye.
Thank you. Tad Gary is not able to be here. I just received an email. Samantha Jackson.
Aye.
Thank you. Bruce Liggett.
Good, important work. Aye.
Thank you. Joan Service.
Aye.
Thank you. Charles Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. And Tamara Wright.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right. Thank you so much. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is, let me scroll down here, the regional strategies to end homelessness. Amy St. Peter, Deputy Executive Director of MAG, will lead a discussion on the regional efforts underway. Amy?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. Really pleased to have this conversation with you. Our main goal really is to make sure that all of you are thoroughly engaged in these strategies to address homelessness at that regional level, and that you're provided the most current information to help you with that engagement, to support your participation, and to offer some opportunities for feedback right in this meeting as well. So let me see if I can share my screen. Just want to share this graphic with you. As a way of kind of describing where we've started from. So we've been working on this with you since October. October is when we first started this conversation. Just want to pause. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I can't see you, so please verbally let me know if there's any questions, and I'll stop sharing this in just a moment as we move on. I have 4 main topics to run by you today. So in terms of how we got to this place today, just wanted to offer a brief overview, and really it's more of a reminder. So you'll see research, coordination, outreach. These are really kind of the supports to all of this work. So all of this work in the middle and the upside down pyramid is really supported by these 3 areas. Our research is continuing. It started last fall, and we have completed some of our research efforts, and more are underway right now. Of course, the Outreach Forum series continues. We're very excited just later on this week to have that forum with the faith community and be able to move forward with the business community just next month on March 11th. And then, of course, the coordination. And you are really key to all of this coordination. We want to make sure that we're leveraging your expertise in all of this work. So we wanted really to ground this work in the local strategies and action steps and priorities. And so we've conducted and we've created an inventory then that really reflects the local approved plans, the strategies, the priorities, the action steps that are being taken by local communities. We continue to update this as new activities are identified at that local level. And there's more than 300. And I believe you have a copy of that. If not, we'll be sure to get that to you. Now, of course, some of the strategies are repeated from one community to the next. And so we've been able to distill those really large number of more than 300 down to a group of, I think about 18 or so strategies that are best poised for regional implementation. And a number of communities are implementing those local strategies. We've also completed an analysis of the most effective regional strategies at the national level. We started off looking at 37. In a previous meeting, we had shared with you the 6 strategies where our consultants conducted a bit more of a deep dive, and they had developed some briefs that were shared with you previously as well. And so out of those 37, we're focused on about 18 or so. That leads us into the 29 regional strategies. You do have that draft portfolio for your review, and we continue to add to that. And so we're adding to it to reflect other strategies that are coming about as recommended by the outreach, the research, as well as by the coordination. As a further filter for this work, we've developed 5 regional goals, which I can share with you in just a moment. Those were distributed to you earlier as well. We've had some refinements already to those draft goals, and we'd love to get your refinements today during this meeting. These 5 regional goals will be used as a filter, to further vet and prioritize these regional strategies that will become at the tip that regional portfolio. That regional portfolio is what you'll see at your April board meeting for action, and then we'll proceed to the MAG Management Committee and Regional Council in May for their action as well. It's critically important to make sure that we're really fully engaging not just the board, but also the local communities, because all of these strategies need to be implemented in communities. And so we want to be able to work very closely with the board, with the communities, with our regional partners to develop the action steps really that can help us to do 3 things. 1, just as a reminder, to reduce the numbers of people who are experiencing homelessness. 2, to increase access to homeless assistance programs throughout the entire region, giving all communities an opportunity to engage in this work. And then 3, to strengthen that safety net. We know that when the moratorium is lifted on evictions, we're going to have a number of people becoming homeless, some of them for the very first time. So we need to really enhance and make more robust our regional infrastructure right now to address homelessness in order to meet the current demand, as well as the the imminent demand that will come about when that moratorium is lifted. I do want to pause for a moment and see if any of you have questions on this graphic in front of you now. Any questions, comments? Okay, let me see. Hey, Jeremy, can you let me know how I stop sharing my screen now, please?
The green bar at the top. If you press view options, you should have a stop.
Share, got it. Okay, thank you very much. So that was the first item. I wanted to share with you that the way that we're funneling down to that regional portfolio that will be coming before you in April. And we want to make sure that it's not the first time that we're talking about it with you, that you really have every opportunity to engage in this work, and that we have the benefit of your perspectives, your expertise. So before we leave the strategies themselves, any other questions, comments, direction from the board on the strategies and the process then to funnel down to that regional portfolio? Thoughts? Okay, we'll go ahead and share my screen again. We'd love to get these draft goals in front of you as well. So these are the goals as we've drafted them. And I do say draft very specifically because we really want and need your perspective on this, the benefit of your expertise, and would love to run these by you. So we had distributed these previously to you for your consideration, for your review, for your comment. We have received some additional feedback from our regional partners through the Regional Collaborative on Homelessness. And so you'll see that in track changes. So we wanted to be able to highlight those suggestions with you and to get your suggestions and to really be able to incorporate those fully into this document. We're happy to get any feedback that you might have at this meeting. And also if you have any further feedback after this meeting, then please do feel free to reach out at any time. So we have added a very short kind of introduction to these goals, really clarifying that this work will be founded and really be fully embedded in the diverse perspectives. And that includes persons with lived experience, the racial equity lens, which we were just discussing, and really, again, emphasizing high quality data. We're very thankful to Crisis Response Network and to our own regional analytics division, and to you for your support with helping to understand that data and maintain access to high quality data. The guiding principles that are listed came from the document that you had previously approved back in January, and that includes a focus on making sure that this work is regional, it's inclusive, it's accountable, and it is sustainable for the long term. So from there, we have 5 goals, and this really helps us to better organize and understand, filter, and prioritize the more than 24 regional strategies that you've received in that draft portfolio that will be further distilled, refined, vetted, and then prioritized for your action come April. So these 5 goals: 1, to substantially increase flexible funding for homeless assistance programs. The justification, we hear about this in just about every single outreach forum. We hear from people that they're very thankful for the current levels of support, but they're really needing some more flexible funding. We do know and want to honor and validate the flexible funds that are already in existence. There are a few different pools that are already in existence. We really want to make sure that we're understanding what those pools offer right now, and that we're able to figure out if it makes more sense for us to supplement an existing pool, or if a new pool needs to be created that is maybe a bit different in focus. So this is the one area really where the goal and the strategy are just really hand in hand. And this again has come about as part of our national research in terms of the most effective practices at that regional level, as well as being voiced again and again through the outreach forum. And then moving on then, this is again, another key foundation to this work. Another key principle is to geographically disperse homeless shelters. And then the next goal is to geographically disperse the homeless housing as well. And so there are a few different strategies and possibly more that could be used to further this goal and to be able to operationalize this goal. And this is supported by the strategies that are present right now in the shelter category of the draft regional portfolio. And these are just some of the opportunities then from utilizing vacant hotel rooms, shared housing in a temporary setting, and then there's new shelter facilities. And again, this is work that's being looked at and considered, if not implemented, by a number of communities throughout the region. And we really want to focus on the geographic dispersion of homeless shelters so that people can access help where they're currently living right now, so they can stay within their communities. This helps to not overburden, particularly the city of Phoenix. It also helps to build capacity throughout the entire region, which serves everyone better. That third goal then is to take a look at expanding the supply, variety, and location of permanent housing options. Again, looking at being able to increase the footprint of homeless housing in all communities throughout the region. The justification for that, we've just seen the rate of evictions is steadily increasing, and particularly will do so once the moratorium is lifted. And something also is that people, even if they own their own home, they're not confident that they can pay their mortgage either. And so we very much want to keep that on our radar and understand that many people are living at risk right now of experiencing homelessness. We need to be able to serve them as well. We do have some strategies that are included in the categories of housing right now in that draft regional portfolio. And just as a reminder, the categories that are currently listed in that draft regional portfolio: housing, as you see here; shelter, as previously noted. We have housing, shelter, services, diversion, and prevention. And then we've also added coordination to be able to really emphasize the importance of working together in a multi-sector, multidisciplinary way. So some of the possible strategies then that might support this housing goal is tiny homes, pallet homes, such as what we've seen, for example, through the recent City of Tempe Council action and consideration; apartments, shared housing in a permanent setting in this reference; home ownership; and landlord engagement and incentives. We want to make sure that we're broadening the supply of rental units that are available because of that outreach then to the landlords. The fourth goal in this out of 5 is to strengthen multi-sector collaborations to close gaps in homeless service delivery. We've added in healthcare from what we had previously discussed. They're a very important partner in this work, and we want to make sure that they're represented. We've added a number of different possible strategies that could be brought to bear to support this multi-sector collaboration. This is present in the draft regional portfolio that you have in front of you in a number of different areas, and we continue to add to this as we uncover more information and more opportunities then to further work in this area. One example of that is the Regional Misdemeanor Offender Program with law enforcement. There are a number of departments in the region who are doing this work very, very successfully, really partnering with law enforcement, as often they're the first point of contact with people who are experiencing homelessness, who are still living on the streets. And they're in a really great position then to be able to introduce them to the outreach teams, to the homeless service programs, and be able to get them assistance quickly. So we want to be able to really lift up the local strategies that are working and to provide them on a consistent regional basis and be able to increase capacity throughout the region to undertake that important work. Then finally, our 5th goal then is to increase prevention and diversion programs. This really is a key focus of this work, particularly because of the moratorium being lifted on evictions and understanding that there are many more people who are on the brink of homelessness than what some communities might understand. So we want to make sure that we keep this front and center. We understand that that there's a lot of funding right now that's available because of COVID relief. We also understand that that funding is time limited and it won't always be around. And so we really need to build up the infrastructure then to be able to address prevention and diversion. So we have a number of strategies that are represented right now in that draft regional portfolio. We have added a few more for your consideration, and really looking at how do we make sure that we're giving people opportunities to remain housed and not have to go through the homeless service delivery system and shelter system in the first place. So if we can divert people very quickly, that's more humane, it's more cost effective, and it's a better utilization of resources throughout our community. So I wanted to share with you these 5 goals to see if you have any questions, comments, any additional feedback. Again, that can be shared now within the context of this meeting or at any time throughout this process. I want to pause for a moment and see if there's any questions here or comments.
Amy, I had a couple thoughts.
Yes.
For the first one, the flexible funding.
Yes.
We did that with the veteran work group as well through funding furnished through Quicken Loans. And what we really did was we had it really targeted for things that aren't already available to be paid by local or federal grants. And so I would suggest just making sure that when you are looking at it, that you're trying to pay for things that other grants can't pay for. One of the biggest things that we ended up paying for were eviction judgments. No federal grant program can pay for those eviction judgments, and nobody will house somebody that has that debt on their record, and there's no way to remove that debt. That was a really big thing. Also, some odd prevention things, like somebody was about to be evicted because their dog was not trained, and so we were able to pay for dog training to keep that family together. So that would just be my suggestion, just making sure that you're not taking away, like if somebody doesn't qualify for services, they're able to get rental assistance. But if they are, that we're utilizing those resources first, and then utilizing the flexible funding and trying to make it so that's closing the gaps, the actual gaps that we have. Another thing would be that just for the diversion part, I would suggest that we really need to implement some improvement practices around our diversion, because my data is a couple years old, but we did this with rapid resolution with SSVF with veterans, and we saw about a 35% rate of success for families to be diverted, but less than 5% for singles. So I think in order for that to be really successful, we have to bump up how we're doing diversion for singles. And then for goal number 3, just making sure that if we're advocating for more housing opportunities, that we make sure that there is a homeless preference. And also something to keep in consideration is that sometimes people's income is too low for qualifying for low income housing tax credit properties. And if there's some way to get a workaround to make sure that they can actually qualify for that, even if their income is too low. But those are some like immediate things that jump out at me, and I'll pause and see if there are other board members that have comments and suggestions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any other thoughts or feedback, questions?
I just want to echo what Tamara said, but add that I believe there's some, and Bruce might be able to speak more to this, but the Treasury funds for emergency rental assistance does, at least DES, I think, was going to allow for a certain amount of money to cover the fines and fees for eviction, like filings and those legal fees. So again, we want to make sure we use whatever funds is available for that gap, so that we can look elsewhere with future funds, but obviously with this current funds that we have available, I think that's the case.
Yes, and Joan, the Treasury came out with new guidance today. Clarified a few things and clarified the ability to pay for late fees. And so the cities that we're working with are all looking at doing everything we can to achieve the result, which is not having people be evicted. So we're not looking at putting on barriers to things that need to get taken care of.
Absolutely.
So did Treasury say that they could pay the back rent, the arrears that would be due before somebody was evicted?
Oh, yes. In fact, under the new federal program, you have to pay the arrearages first. So
that's what I've noticed. The barriers were for veterans were that they SSVF couldn't pay their arrears, and so they couldn't get into a new unit.
Yeah, we got to take care of the past before we can go forward with them, which just makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. I completely agree. I think it's critically important to make sure that we're fully leveraging existing funding sources and opportunities there, and then using the flexible funding to really fill in those gaps. And Madam Chair, the points that you had made about making sure that it's really not just flexible, but also kind of creative. So for example, in the national research that was done there, even they're citing examples similar to that, where like even using the funds perhaps to pay for a crib or something like that, because that was a barrier to somebody being able to move into their own housing. And so it just really starting where people are right now and looking at what they need to make housing more successful, even possibly in some cases, if that's not what some might classify as traditional housing cost.
Madam Chair, can I just make a point of clarification? I was just listening to that conversation that Bruce was having, the interaction you guys were having. I think there's still a point of clarification we need probably from the Treasury. We can pay arrearages on an apartment that somebody's going to stay in, but I know one of the big problems for us is once somebody gets evicted, having a new apartment won't accept them until they pay off the old apartment eviction stuff. And so we've been running into that problem a lot. It's not clear that this new treasury money will allow for that at this point. I don't think it will, but I know that that is something certainly in our city that we're looking at potentially using some AZ CARES dollars for, is that piece of payback. So I think we're looking towards the more flexible funding. I don't know that the new treasury program to date is going to pay for that, but I do love that we're continuing to receive new guidance, and I'm sort of hopeful that there might be opportunities for the new administration to even make some changes along the way, since we have until December 31st to spend this money, and then potentially the money that Congress is looking at now, if there is to be additional money, if we can keep advocating on a national level for these nuances that folks that aren't in this business, so to speak, might not think of. I mean, as I think Nikki said earlier, the evictions are happening anyway for a variety of reasons, and those arrears don't just go away. The judgment is still sitting there. That's just one instance. So I know we're trying to be creative over here about how can we support that move-in cost, which might include that back stuff. And there's, that's just one example of many intricacies. So I think we really still have to be vocal about what the aftermath of eviction looks like. It's not just this, it's not as simple as it appears. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Ryan. No, and there will be a legislative component to the regional strategies as well. And so there could be some opportunities to really elevate issues just like that. So excellent. Thank you. Any other feedback on any of these goals? Any other additional revisions? We will be adding in, just making sure that we're targeting items that aren't covered by other grant sources under diversion, making sure that we're not just increasing diversion programs, but also targeting those diversion programs, particularly for folks who may have been underserved by other efforts, such as singles, taking a look at the arrearages and possible advocacy issues there as well. Any other points of feedback on this?
I just I'm trying to keep up. Sorry, I've kind of had some distractions and whatnot. I guess my question, and you may have covered this, but is in terms of our input, today, what are the next steps? I mean, I will admit I've not fully digested all of this and spent time with it. But I also know the group's trying to move urgently. So kind of what's our goal from our input today, I guess?
Great. Thank you so much, Eric, for asking that. Actually, that was one of the 4 points I wanted to cover today. We are forming a strategy team, a team of folks from different organizations, different entities who can help us to work really intensively on the refinement of these strategies. So if you care to serve on the team, that would be fantastic. We do intend to meet weekly, which I know can be a burden for your already very busy calendars. If folks aren't able to meet weekly, we completely understand that. We will be sure to circle back with you at each board meeting and in between as well as wanted to make sure that you're up to speed and that we have the benefit of your perspective on this. And so if you prefer to give input during board meetings, we can absolutely accommodate that. If anyone does have the time, the interest, and the willingness to serve on that strategy team, we would love to have members of the board really deeply involved in this work. We want to make sure that we're respecting your busy calendars though, and are happy to work with you in any kind of capacity that would work for you.
I mean, I generally think that you get better, you're right to do that sort of a process. You get better work done, and this is a discrete period of time. I'm not in a position to volunteer for such a thing, but I would love for there to be strong representation from this group. So if I would be happy to serve, but also there may be others that really want to do that. The other thing I thought about is especially when we talk about diversion or prevention strategies, that you get to, I think you also want to include maybe the non-traditional players, right? I mean, the social service agencies. I mean, I know there's a lot of connections, but in some places homelessness kind of gets separated. So, I guess it just feels like that's good. It's important to working on the strategy, but it's going to be you need to quickly bring in some additional folks, I would think. to address that topic more fully. But maybe that's one of your action steps coming out of the work. So, sorry, I'm talking myself in a circle, but
No,
yeah, I mean, I do think you want, I mean, the six partnership agencies represent a huge chunk of the sector, but I still think there may be some other actors out there in addition that you want to connect with. So.
Oh, absolutely. No, and we are really working very hard to make sure that this process is very inclusive. We love to work with any member of the board who wants to participate in that strategy team. We're also making sure that we bring your direction to that strategy team. So even if folks don't have the time to serve on it, then we still have the benefit of your guidance. And we are also continuing to conduct the outreach forums as well as the surveys to make sure that we can really bring in diverse perspectives so that we can use all of that feedback then and really use that to shape these goals and these strategies as they move forward. So no, completely agree. Critically important.
Amy, one thing I did think about too is if there was a way to increase investments from other cities other than the city of Phoenix, if we can engage in that opportunity. And then I would be really curious about how we're going to work through policy and the legislative and city councils. So I would be interested if there's a work group on that would be meeting. I would love to join that one, but I think that would be crucially important that we have to align our policies with what our strategy is going to be on the ground.
Absolutely. No, agreed. So to touch on the point about how do we engage other communities in this work. So for example, I'm presenting at the City of Glendale study session tomorrow and have offered to any city, town, county who wants to have us come in and talk about this work. We're happy to do so really at any time. We are continuing to update our management committee and regional council as well, which helps us then continue that dialogue with the municipalities and really helping to communicate the opportunities that can be made available, as well as really kind of strengthening that sense of regional ownership of this issue to make sure that communities are investing in this. We're grateful for the communities that have been investing very significantly, such as Phoenix and others, wanting to make sure that all communities really then have a role in this work moving forward.
Great.
Thank you for that.
And then I think we had a public comment from Amy as well.
Yes. I think what I heard is that she wanted to jump in at the end. I have one more item to show, but if you care to take the public comment now, I'm happy to do that as well.
We can do it at the end. That's great.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing this document and see if I can share just one more document with you. I know there have been some questions then about what is the board's role in this work and what's a timeline, because the board really is very active in both sides of this timeline. The portions that are listed above. And again, this is very draft. This is for your consideration. This is a starting place for discussion. This is an idea of where the work could land in terms of the board's foundational work that you're undertaking right now. So you'll see here, January, February, kind of March, your strategic planning, member recruitment, structure realignment, regional action on these regional strategies. So we've been discussing this together as a board. What happens in here from August through next June is for your discussion. Really, please change this, make this your own. These are merely ideas for your consideration. But anticipating perhaps that as you develop the board's regional plan to end homelessness, that you might want to pick up on where these regional strategies leave off. So we're doing a lot of legwork with you, for you right now. You can really pick that up and use that. Maybe just doing a check with that landscape analysis of what are the long-term needs and the overall systems capacity, looking at the sub-regional level, getting a bit more granular there, developing the plan, and then approving and implementing the plan. So this is for your consideration, really just to offer some ideas to help inform your discussion. This you've seen before here on the bottom. This is how the regional strategies align with and coincide with your foundational work as well. So you've seen this before in terms of the outreach and research occurring now, pivoting then to the regional strategies and then the tactics to implement then by August, providing ongoing coordination and support, working with our regional partners, working with this board and the groups that are supporting the board very directly. So just wanted to offer this as a point of consideration, really to be modified and revised according to your direction. So that completes what I had to present. Are there any questions about this before I stop sharing the screen and then we proceed into whatever direction you might have, as well as a public comment?
Thank you, MAG staff, for doing a timeline. I'm a visual person and like to see where we're going. So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. And the actions that we undertake, the time that it takes within each one, that's up to your direction. But this is a starting place really to take a look at how that work might proceed pending your input. Any other additional comments or questions, direction?
No, I think it's very helpful to have it laid out and thought through, like the mountains, as we go forward. I think our co-chair, as our co-chairs take this and kind of digest it and how we're going to organize ourselves going forward. I think this is a really helpful guide for us as we take our next steps. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. You're welcome. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we will stop sharing. And Madam Chair, I believe we have some public comment. I'm not sure if you want to proceed with that now or open up more discussion.
That would be great, Amy, if you're still on. Amy Schwaben.
Present. Thank you, Amy and Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess similar to what Eric was saying, I'm not sure where the appropriate place is to provide input. So if I can just say a couple things here and you can take it or leave it or tell me there's some other place I'm supposed to show up and say thanks or ask questions. I do appreciate the stepping through the process and collecting the strategies. I guess something that jumps out for me is that similar to what I said on the race equity plan, I don't see what the big goal is. So I guess I'm wondering, is everyone who's participating in the planning in agreement that is the big goal to end homelessness? Is it to get to functional zero on all populations? Sort of like over what time frame? So what's going to look different? How will it be measured? What is the community who's part of this calling success? And is the selection of strategies about choosing things that will add up to make that change? So there's wonderful strategies. Communities are doing hundreds of things, but will the choosing and the prioritizing be a selection of strategies that adds up to some overall reduction and prevention of homelessness? And it may be too soon, so if I'm asking things that you don't have the answers to, that's fine. But it made me think that maybe there's some consensus building on what are the overarching values of doing this work together. So it's great to talk about shelters in other places. I'm all on board for that. And is that because our community believes anyone who's experiencing homelessness should be able to access a shelter bed? Or is it just to say we now have 52 shelters, 2 in every city? So for me, there's some gaps missing in how the selection is being made to do certain things, and to what end, and what will it all add up to. And then I think maybe what Tamara was mentioning around policy, and Joan I know is on the agenda, is the COC, is the board in a place to weigh in on state level policy this session, or is MAG lobbying for some of those things, because that would affect the work of this regional plan.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, please.
Great, thank you. Amy, thank you very much for that feedback. Definitely good, important elements to keep in mind as this work unfolds. I agree. We definitely need to define what success is, and then we need to assess if the strategies that are being proposed help us to reach that measure of success. And so that's definitely good feedback to take into account and to really flesh out more as this work unfolds. In terms of your question about the advocacy, I know that we generally defer to the coalition. They're really built for advocacy and are absolute experts in that regard. And so I would, from my perspective, I would encourage everyone to work very closely with Joan on those issues. If there's anything that we can do to support those issues, then please do let us know. But I know that Joan's tracking that very, very closely.
Yeah, I don't if it's Eric, I don't mind adding Amy, and we're going to have a topic here in a bit about the strategic planning process. And I think some of your question around the overall goal is in some of that process. And we've talked a bit about it. And so maybe there'll be, it might be a little more clear when we do that report. I will say on the second topic, and I'm again operating a little bit behind because I wasn't able to be at the last strategic planning meeting, but I did raise, probably inartfully, that same question about the kind of should the board take a stand, take a position and I was actually thinking about the examples you gave around with the legislature, something like that. When I raised it, I said, I know that it's controversial and unique. However, it does seem like the kind of thing the board ought to have, a policy or a process around determining, because there will inevitably could be situations, I feel more firmly about this than I did the last time we talked about it, where whatever the topic is, it could be absolutely critical to us reaching our goals. So I tend to agree with Amy's comment that it would be good to have at least a decision tree for how we take positions like that. And again, we can talk about it more with strategic planning.
Madam Chair, this is Joan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So just a couple things to all of this is really good conversation, and I'll just drop little thoughts as they come, and then entertain any questions. But okay, so first to what Amy, Eric, and Tamara mentioned, the policy conversation. I will share that the Housing Coalition, being a statewide organization, we tend to just focus on federal and state. We've dipped our toes. Actually, no, Joanna's jumped in on local level activities, and in fact, she's getting ready to launch a toolkit on affordable housing strategies at the local level. I think that there's some strength, or there's some opportunities for engagement there that I'd welcome. I really would welcome more voices at the table, at least under the Housing Coalition umbrella. I get what you're saying, both Tamara, Eric, and Amy, about because I think there's strength in numbers, and I think your point being like, how can we add the Maricopa Continuum of Care to different things that as being either endorsed, or supported, concerned about, et cetera. I get that, and so I do think that there should be an opportunity to have that decision tree under the structure of the Continuum of Care board. So that's a dialogue that we need to go through. And then the last thing I just wanted to share, just on the outline strategies, just as, and Amy, you covered it, but I just want to tease up something that to me was important. It was important to me. So, and thank you for including it. And that is, as we focus on multi-sector collaborations, obviously that's important, right? But we also need to make sure that we're strengthening our own self, our own kitchen. Like, we need to make sure, as we talk about multi-sector collaboration, we need to think about what gaps exist in our system. How can we fix those gaps? How can we support our own, our staff? How can we invest in, the professionalism of our staff? How can we make sure that they're supported? How can we make sure our own individual sector is best supported before, or it doesn't have to be first, it can be at the same time. But as we look at multi-sector collaboration, we also need to look at our own self too. So those are just my little threads that I'd share, and happy to entertain any questions.
Anything else from any board members? We're getting a little tight on time, so if there's nothing else, I'd like to move on to item 7. Going once. Okay. Item 7.
Tamara?
Yes.
Sorry, Tamara. This is up for action.
Oh, how did I miss that?
Sorry.
Okay, what are we acting on?
Oh, sorry, forgive me. No. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry to throw random things your way.
Okay. All right, so item 7, consultant priorities. Thank you so much, Amy, for presenting on that. Next, we'll hear from Brandy Mead, Human Services Human Services Director at MAG, who will lead a brief discussion on possible consulting projects. Some of these may be funded from sources such as foundations, and others can be considered using the planning grant funds received from HUD for consultant projects. And we welcome the board's feedback on priority for these projects. Brandy?
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the board. As the collaborative applicant for the Continuum of Care, MAG receives planning grant funds from HUD to conduct planning, operating, coordinating, system development, evaluation, measuring outcomes, carrying out a collaborative process, and for annual activities involved with submitting the consolidated application to HUD. In MAG's application for the planning grant dollars to HUD, our budget includes funding for labor to carry out the required activities that I mentioned, as well as funding for consulting projects that align with the goals of the board. We are in the beginning of the spend down for a new grant and want to ensure that we include the board's priorities with what those consulting projects shape out to be for the upcoming year. So with your meeting materials for today's discussion, you did receive a memo outlining a list of possible projects that we're seeking the board's input on. In that memo, you'll see the first two projects are continuation projects from last year, and those include the work with the racial equity partners for ongoing implementation and support with the racial equity plan, as well as work with Homebase for the upcoming CFC NOFA using the Presto tool to administer the rank and review process. The other consulting projects included in the memo are potential consulting projects that we may engage in, but are not currently under contract to complete. So moving forward with those projects, using planning grant funds would depend on the priorities and the direction that we receive from the board today. So we are actively looking for your guidance and direction on how we utilize these planning grant dollars for consulting projects. So some of the projects that have come to staff's attention when working with the consultant, and again, these we hope would benefit the continuum of care and would align with your priorities. So I'll run through a list of those projects that are outlined in the memo and then open the floor to your input and discussion. So the first two projects that I mentioned, we are currently engaged with racial equity partners and Homebase. We had included the Regional Strategies Best Practices Portfolio Project to provide support with data collection and community outreach on regional strategies that Amy just spoke about, with the idea that these would be presented to the board in May for approval. There was a scope of work for this project that was included with your meeting materials, and the purpose of that was to give you more information and context so that we could seek your input today on whether or not we wanted to use consulting funds for that. Also included would be a youth systems gaps analysis to be more competitive with the HUD Youth Homeless Demonstration Grant opportunity that the Continuum of Care, per the direction of the board, has applied for in the past, and we have not been successful in receiving. Also included for your consideration would be a full systems gaps analysis to understand and determine community need and solutions toward ending homelessness, and a series of community training sessions. And the board, of course, would have input in what those training sessions are. And these training sessions would be for the community stakeholders, service providers, et cetera. In the past, we have partnered with the Arizona Housing Coalition to provide an array of trainings for the community, and would propose to partner with the Housing Coalition again. And again, those training topics would be to determined. So there's a total, in the memo, there's a total estimated, and again, this is estimated. We don't know the exact cost and scope for these projects, but we estimate to be around $165,000. And again, we have $175,000 available to us for consulting projects. We are also, per the direction of our Madam Chair, looking into technical assistance opportunities provided by federal and local partners, and you did receive a TA or technical assistance matrix that was emailed out to board members today. So that's a supplemental document to provide information around technical assistance that the Continuum has received over the past year, as well as outlining potential technical assistance opportunities that we might be able to leverage for additional support. So one example of this would be technical assistance from the Corporation for Supportive Housing to offer around stimulus funding and developing effective strategies to house people. So we will consider the potential for technical assistance opportunities as we identify needs for consulting projects, and of course would utilize especially free technical assistance when we can to complete work in these areas. So today we are asking the board for your input and direction around what consulting projects are your priorities. Do they align with the possible projects that were included in the memo? Or do you have other priorities for these consulting dollars to be implemented this year? So we are seeking your guidance, and at this time, would like to open up the discussion from input from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Any guidance, input, thoughts from board members?
Madam Chair, I can jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, Samantha, sorry. So there's a couple of things on here. It's interesting timing because we're in the midst of that strategic planning process, and it feels like we would know more about where we should put these dollars in terms of that work that needs to be completed from that direction. I do like the idea of continuing the racial equity work. And, you know, I think everything that's been discussed so far on the regional strategy side is critical as well. But one of the things that I think sticks out is that gap analysis and how that work gets done. That may be priority for both, like the racial equity and for the regional strategy. So, you know, really understanding what that could look like, I think would be really helpful.
And I was just going to add that I really wanted this matrix because I felt like there were some things that could be covered by TA that we already have, like CSH could probably help with some of our regional strategies. They've been doing this work for a while. And then I'm also noticing Focus Strategies had their own national and regional best practice strategies. And so what are we doing with this TA information once we get it? And are we even implementing it? Because I don't want to just keep throwing dollars at things that we're not actually implementing and not actually doing. And so I just wanted to flag that. Any other board members?
Madam Chair, Brandy, I think, thank you, Amy, for explaining more about the strategic, I'm having a hard time with words today. I'm tired. Strategic goals. And then Brandy for more information on the where our TA is currently. I support where we're going, especially with this new level of understanding, and information has been very, very helpful. And I think we're really moving forward in a positive direction. So I support it. I do think it would just be helpful in the future if potentially, as we kind of reset and get a better understanding of what our role is and what the role of others around us is and how we all work together, if we could maybe see our budget so we could have a better grasp of how we do want to spend our very limited but critical dollars, and where we think we could get the better use out of free resources, or even resources that our partners within ourselves and outside of ourselves could potentially bring to the table, and how we can be more intentional about leveraging those. So like if we know where we're going and what kinds of help we want, then we can look at which ones do we have in our community? Which ones can we get for free? Which ones should we really focus on paying for? So I support where you're going. I think we should move forward with that, but maybe in the future, if we could start building out our budget so that we can maybe be looking at it once a month or once a quarter or something, and then we might know what we should go after and where we should spend money.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, may I respond?
Yes.
And I want to thank all of you, all of the board members, for your comments and your questions. I do appreciate the support. And Ryan, to your comment about the budget, we would be happy to provide that. And in fact, each year when we apply for the planning grant dollars, we do provide that to the board members for approval. So we are happy to do that. We are working off of the 2019 planning grant budget right now, so I'm happy to share that with you. We essentially have two different budget areas in a sense, one for consulting projects and one for labor. So, and I know we had MAG staff had presented at a previous board meeting recently around the fact that we have $175,000 available in consulting projects, and then the remainder of that grant, $620,000 for labor. So we're happy to bring that budget to the board as far as really getting your feedback and prioritization on how we spend down those consulting projects. And if that's something that the board would like more frequent updates on, then we are happy to do that, and are really seeking your priorities in those areas so that the work that we're doing with our consulting partners really do meet the needs that the board has identified.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Are there any other questions or discussion, or do I have a motion to approve the draft list of consultant assistants?
Madam Chair, I guess I'm, given the comments that were just made and the questions, I guess I'm struggling with whether approval is appropriate right now, or if we should revisit this. I mean, particularly, I'm struck by Samantha's comments about the strategic planning process. I mean, there may be some things that come out of that for the board that we'd like to prioritize. But then similarly, I don't want to hold back something that needs to be approved that maybe came from one of our working groups or something. So I guess, yeah. Let me see if I get a response. What does that do?
So it might be helpful to clarify which contracts are a process. So for instance, we know the race equity work is active in process, and maybe it'd be helpful, Brandy, if you could expand on the others as well.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, so we do have two projects that are currently under contract. So those are the Racial Equity Partners and Home Base for the annual application that we've been working with Home Base for about 3 years now to complete that work. As far as the other consulting projects, we are not under contract for any of the others. So again, they're being presented to you for your input today and your guidance. I will say, as far as time-sensitive projects for consideration by the board, engaging with a consultant around the regional strategies best practices portfolio project would be one that is time sensitive. So if the board is wanting us to prioritize planning grant dollars for that project, then we would need to move forward quickly with engaging a consultant in that work. The other projects are not as time sensitive. We have worked with the Arizona Housing Coalition in the past to provide an array of trainings over the course of the year. So that is something we would love to get your input on. Do you want us to continue in that partnership with partnering with the coalition and other groups on providing trainings for the community? So that's something that we can start to schedule out over the course of the year. The others are not as time sensitive. I hope that answers your question.
So would it be appropriate to recommend, and I'll speak as a provider relative to supporting the coalition and the trainings. I mean, I think if we're really wanting to promote best practices throughout the region, I think providing those trainings is an absolute must. So I'm just going to put something out there and you can shoot it down if you want to. So I would recommend we prioritize the racial equity partners and the home-based work, our work with the coalition. You might have thrown one other in there, Brandy, that I missed, but the ones that are, I think those are the most imperative to act on now to keep going and not miss a beat. So.
Madam Chair and Jackie, thank you. So there was one other that is time sensitive, and that's on the regional strategies best practices portfolio.
Yes, forgot that one. Thank you, Brandy. And that is critical in light of the work that we're talking about today. So I would put that forth as a motion for at least discussion or reaction.
Oh, can I ask a clarifying question before the motion is like 100% made? Is that possible?
Of course.
So Jackie, does that part where I think, so okay, we've got racial equity, home base, regional strategies, and then are you wanting to add in the community training sessions?
Yes, please. That would be my hope.
Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha.
And if needed, I'll second that motion.
Okay, Jackie, would you mind just repeating that? So it's just the 4 that are prioritized and ongoing that we are submitting a motion for approval?
I'm clicking the button off and on. Challenged. So yes, that would be true.
Okay, and Samantha seconded. Now I'll ask Sarah to proceed with a roll call if there's no discussion.
Great. All right, Ryan Balch.
Aye.
Eric Cole.
Aye.
Elizabeth DaCosta.
Aye.
Marshall Franklin.
Aye.
Tad Gary. Samantha Jackson.
Aye.
And Bruce Liggett had to jump off. Joan Service.
So I asked her in the chat, do I abstain? Like, she said I can vote, so I just don't know what to do. I mean, yes, I mean, aye, but awkward.
You know, this is Madam Chair, members of the board. I think abstaining would be appropriate in this case. Great. Since the coalition would be impacted by the decision here.
Fantastic. I abstain.
Thank you, Brandy. Appreciate it. Charles Sullivan.
Aye.
Jackie Taylor.
Aye.
And Tamara Wright.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, thank you. We've got a couple more agenda items. I'm so sorry that we're running over time, guys. But moving on to agenda item number 8, development of regional homeless data priorities and analysis tools. Is it Bagley?
Mm-hmm.
Regional Analytics Director at MAG and Director of HMIS and Database Resources, Ty Rosensteel, will lead a presentation on the data priorities and analysis tool recommended for COC board approval. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see everybody. Ty, if you don't mind, I'll take the lead and you could jump on. So Madam Chair, members of the board, HMIS, CRN, and MAG staff have been going back and forth quite a bit. We've been discussing what are the kinds of data sets, analysis that needs to be done to kind of start supporting all the projects and everything else. We've had a number of discussions with Ty's team. Ty and his team have led a number of discussions with the data subcommittee at MAG and a number of other groups, and Ty will provide the results of all of that. What's extremely interesting, one, it's such a collaborative process, but also the fact that Ty's team was working with the data subcommittee, And on our side, MAG team was starting to work together. On our side, was looking at the data needs, and we all came to the similar kind of data and analysis, ideas and suggestions at the same time. So at this time, one of the things that MAG staff is proposing, we've already brought this to the data subcommittee, to the Continuum of Care committee itself, taken input from all our stakeholders, is the possibility of building some mapping tools and analysis tools. The first one being this mapping tool that we're looking to build in the short order, where we'll be showing all the assets, so all the Arizona 211 assets, all the housing assets, et cetera, that are there, and also to start looking from the needs perspective, looking at populations that are vulnerable, any kind of data that we have from our outreach tools, et cetera, and bringing it all under one roof. We're proposing to bring this first to our partners, stakeholders for review. Want to make sure that all the data that is brought in is correct and is complete. And then if there's anything else, that we'll bring more of that data in there and then start bringing some analysis as we go forward. The tentative timeline, I'm trying to cover myself with all kinds of tentative words, et cetera here, is sometime in the February, March time period, getting all the inputs from our partners, and then also start building these data queries and compilation of data sets, et cetera, and hoping to have a draft tool in the April-May time period that would be available for everybody to review. So that's the first part of the project, is that mapping analysis tool. Ty, can I hand it to you to discuss all the good work that you've been doing on your end?
Sure, thanks, Anna Bob. This is Ty Rosensteel. I'm the Director of HMIS and Database Resources at Crisis Response Network. If we could go to the second page of the document. What we have are 11 items that were basically prepared and brainstormed across each of a number of different committees. Our data subcommittee, our Continuum of Care committee, and an ad hoc work group of the data subcommittee in consultation with MAG and CRN to come up with what are the items that are most pressing in terms of data needs for our community to be able to do so much of the policy work that has been described during our meeting today. So we came up with these 11 items, and I apologize that I didn't sort them on the far right-hand column based off of community need. But on that far right-hand column, we identified 5 items that are identified as the absolute highest need. And really, without this information being available to the people that are using it and are doing the planning work and providing services, that's a real gap in our data availability and transparency in our community. So we're looking for the board to review this list. It's been reviewed and approved by the data subcommittee, the Continuum of Care committee, and recommended for approval of this group. And I'm not sure that we want to spend the time going through each of the items, but I'm certainly available to field any questions that you have today.
Thank you.
Great work.
Oh, go ahead.
Great work, everybody.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you're both working together. I mean, I have great expectations for what you're going to produce, but really needed.
And I really love that the regionalism in homelessness and looking where people are coming from and services and where people are moving to. I think that's really critical.
So maybe while the group is reviewing, I'll just add that in the column labeled report type, we outlined that some of these items may be items that may be publicly available, things that you can manipulate on your own. Other items may need more discretion, more narrative, more explanation. Everything listed in the report type area is really tentative. We're just brainstorming what would be the types of ways to best communicate and translate this information. I'll call out item number 4, provider performance metrics. This is one that we're going to have to, be really delicate about, talking about what is the individual performance of individual provider programs. This is something that, once this data is available, we're going to have to work really closely with our providers to say, what is our comfort of sharing this information? What's the level of sharing of that information? Should it be shared with providers? Should it be shared with funders? Should it be completely transparent? And just like we did with our street outreach tool that is currently hosted by MAG, we're able to come up with different levels of security that would meet the need. So our street outreach viewer is a password protected document or a password protected tool that is available to people that utilize the HMIS system. But because that data preparation is done, we can still use it for planning purposes across a lot of different avenues. So just because it's on the list, I think there's still a lot of conversation that's going to happen between the committees, the providers, MAG, CRN, about what is the best use of this information and the best way to display that in the community. But in the end, we really need all of this data prepared and available so that we can use it for analysis in whatever capacity is needed for planning.
Ty, did you say that these will be dashboards that are created?
So it really would depend on the type, Madam Chair. In column, in the kind of the 4th column, it lists out report type with tentative listed behind it of kind of different methodology that we would think of trying to present this information. So item number 1 is the item that Annabelle presented on with the timeline. That would be sort of a live interactive mapping tool similar to some of the other incredible tools that MAG has available through their analytics department, kind of the mapping tools. So kind of depending on what the topic would be, we're really focused on what would be the use and what would be the intended interpretation of a particular tool. So, just being cognizant that sometimes the data doesn't speak for itself, that you have to give explanations and be able to help provide adequate information after the initial data preparation is done.
Madam Chair, this is Anubhav. If I could add to what Ty said, absolutely agree with that, because I think a lot of this would highly depend on the audience for each one of these analyses and the tools. And in some of these, it could possibly be that we have 2 versions of the same thing, one with a lot more detailed kind of work that Ty and his team have been doing on Tableau, and one that could be easier to read, more of an infographic. So depending on the audience themselves. But the biggest piece that we are hoping for and getting is feedback from all our partners and stakeholders. So the idea being that we should make sure that, as we develop this, all of you are engaged, get your feedback, understanding that, as we do this, we build a draft tool, get the review before one takes it forward to any kind of public forum. And some of these may be internal only for a restricted audience, still one feels comfortable taking them out. But at the end of the day, we want everything to be as transparent as possible and provide as much good data and analysis moving forward.
Great, thank you. This is an item that's up for action in case board members had any other clarifying questions.
I mean, to that last point, it's Eric. To that last point, I could see this tool in the public meetings we've just had, the regional collaborative just had. I could see you rolling out this parts of the tool, but also getting feedback from those groups as well. So I think it'd be really useful. I think it's great. But I also agree, you design it for how it's going to be used by the end user. So that's very thoughtful.
If no other questions or discussion, just in the essence of time, do I have a motion to approve the data priorities and analysis tools?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Joan. And do I have a second?
I'll second, it's Eric.
Thank you, Eric. And I now ask Sarah to proceed with a roll call vote.
Thank you, Tamara. Ryan Balch. Ryan Balch. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, Tamara, did you call on me?
Oh, sorry. We're seeing if you vote yay or nay on this item.
I'm so sorry. Yay.
That's okay. Ryan Balch. Was that a yay, Brian?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Eric Cole.
Aye.
Thank you. Elizabeth DaCosta.
Aye, and just fantastic work on this. Strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Marshall Franklin.
Aye.
Samantha Jackson.
Aye.
Joan Service.
Aye.
Thank you. Charles Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie Taylor.
Aye.
And Tamara Wright.
Aye.
Great. This motion passes.
Thank you, Sarah. We are running a little bit behind, but I did want to just give Joan a moment. She's going to give a very high level and very brief update on the regional efforts to end homelessness since Bruce had to leave. If I could turn it over to Joan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I think, gosh, I thought you were doing a legislative update. My apologies. I'm operating on the wrong agenda apparently. So just high level update on the Regional Collaborative to End Homelessness is that, you know, they're hosting a lot of forums and getting a lot of feedback, and kind of disseminating and really kind of teasing up those messages that you see in some of the strategies that we had a lengthy conversation about. So I think that's, I mean, not just, that sounds like it's not a lot. There's actually a crap ton of work, but want to be sensitive to time. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. And thank you to Eric Cole, who was leading the provider forum that I was on last week and did an outstanding job.
Yes.
So thank you, Eric. I found those to be really interesting, and people really liked it. We were together for a few hours and everybody was like, I could talk to my fellow community members all day long about this, and they felt really engaged. So thank you everybody for that hard work.
Yeah, just adding my thanks to the team, the partnership and the team. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed getting to hear from folks, and it was just, you know, I think as we saw earlier, we're getting a lot from that effort too.
Great. Well, thank you everybody. Great work on that. And I'm just going to move us along to item 10, the COC Board Strategic Planning Sessions and Mission Statement Ad Hoc Meeting Debrief. Whew.
Thanks, Madam. This is me, right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. There's a couple things going on around.
You're getting together. Ryan Balch, Community Resources Manager with the City of Chandler, will provide a debrief from the board strategy sessions and the Mission Statement Ad Hoc Group to help the board identify priorities and next steps.
All right, thanks, Madam Chair. I'll make this really quick. Just to let everybody know that we are engaged, the board is engaged in strategic planning. And we've had 3 sessions to date, and we have another one coming up on March 12th. We started this work on January 15th, and we are being facilitated by a MAG associate. His name is Jim King. He's done a great job soliciting all of our input and really getting, helping us get our thoughts together. We're really going back to basics and looking at things like the role of the board, what we envision the board being, what impact we want to have on the community, and what level of support we need to do that. All board members have been extremely engaged. And after much discussion, we decided to start by revamping our mission statement. So we really feel like we need to go all the way back to the beginning and sort of look at who we are now and how we want to move forward. So in that process, we have identified 7 areas of interest. And those are funding, making data-driven decisions, being leaders in homelessness for the region, being good listeners and being a sounding board for the community, providing advocacy and being a voice for the community, and co-creating goals and being innovative with our partners in the region who are doing the same work. After we sort of established those broad areas, we formed an ad hoc group to take that information further and actually develop a statement for reaction of the entire board. That group is still meeting. We've already gone back to the full board once for a little bit more input. And so we're still working through that. And then our next strategic planning meeting, I think I mentioned this already, is Friday, March 12th from 2 to 4. All of our strategic planning sessions are posted on the MAG webpage, and all members of the community are welcome and encouraged to watch the meetings, and they're also recorded and you can watch them later on YouTube. And if you have any questions about these sessions, please don't hesitate to contact Sarah Kent, our very capable staffer, and she can answer those questions for you. And I'm happy to, if there's questions, great. If not,
thank you.
Ryan. Yep.
Just for clarification for everybody listening, it might be helpful to think about the board in 3 phases. We have the current board now, and we're entering into a transition board, and then ultimately the board will lead us into the future. I'm excited to conduct these strategy sessions with you and shape our work moving forward and to define who we are as a board and transition the system. All right, any other comments from board members? All right, thank you so much, Ryan. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is requests for future agenda items. Do any board members have any action or discussion items for future meetings?
Madam Chair, just as I mentioned earlier, maybe since, and it sounds like we have been presented this in the past, but clearly I was not paying good enough attention. I'd like to get a look at the budget, one in a near future meeting, or it could be at strategic planning, whatever.
Yes, thank you. Budget review.
You know, what might also help is just thinking about the timelining that Amy shared earlier was really helpful. Maybe our calendar for the year about, you know, what we think sequencing is on different, I mean, I know the NOFA stuff is different than most years, but, you know, a board, not just the meetings, but board calendar in terms of like, you know, when big decisions need to happen, when we anticipate those things happening, that would help.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't know if it would be appropriate. We're trying to track on the new stimulus plan, and I don't know if that's something that Joan is really taking a look at. But you know, those funds as they come to Arizona and Maricopa County, kind of the region, Greater Phoenix area. How are we looking at that? At those dollars, where are they gonna help out with housing and things like that? So I don't know who would do that, but I'm incredibly interested in it.
That's a great point. And how are we planning for when the eviction moratorium ends?
That's if I could add, I say yes. My colleague Joanna, she's been tracking all of the federal funds coming into the state addressing housing and homelessness. And I would, love it if we could get her to this next meeting to talk about it, because I think it would also inform, we're setting up some meetings with our congressional members for the upcoming. So I think time is of the essence. That would be great. In terms of answering your question about how we handle things with the eviction moratorium, I mean, gosh, hold on. I just don't even know. I'm just totally honest. Like
Yeah. Thank you, Joan. All right. Any comments from the board? Any announcements or events they would like to highlight?
Sorry. There was if y'all remember, there was that Governor's Gold Council on Ending Homelessness, and then there was the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. That subcommittee is kind of tapered off, but some good outcomes with the home matters. There were some good outcomes from that group. But one of the activities last January, we went to Austin and checked out Community First. it's a different, there's some, we went to go check it out, and we're bringing back virtually the leader of Community First, a woman named Amber, who has some ties to Arizona. Anyways, we're having a forum on, I think it's March 3rd. So I'd encourage you all, if anybody's interested in hearing about Community First and efforts to do something similar in Arizona. There's been some hints of it locally and in other parts of the state. So welcome you all to attend that.
Thank you, Joan. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there.
Thanks, everyone.